the podcast Empowering People, a show dedicated to helping folks find their path to success. Sponsored by Hypnosis Works LLC and Realty MD. Your hosts, Dave Membrila and Martha Dabdoub. Take it away, folks. Welcome to another episode of Empowering People. Our whole purpose of coming to you live is, actually not live, pre-recorded, is to help you get inspired. My name is David Membrila. I'm the owner of Hypnosis Works LLC and also Martha's First Realty with Realty MD with my co-host,
Martha Dabdoub.
From Realty MD.
From Realty MD,
and
where you're pulse away from the purchase of your home.
And we're really excited about having this next guest that you're going to meet in a minute. There's some great things. I remember watching him basically grow up as a kid. I'm not going to give you a spoiler alert. Before we do that, I have another letter or email. And again, we're encouraging folks to find us on Facebook. If you are looking to friend me and I do not know you, please send me a message saying who you are and why you want to be my friend, because a lot of times I think they're fake, so I won't accept those. But if you want to be a friend on Facebook because of empowering people or because you want to know more about hypnosis or real estate for that matter, please send me a quick message and I'll easily friend you.
Yes.
Both of us. And if you have a question for either one of us, whether it's regarding real estate or hypnosis, again, hit us both up. If you send me a real estate question, I'm going to share it with Martha anyway, because she's my broker and she has an entirely different perspective and a whole lot more knowledge as a broker than I may have. And hypnosis, I'll probably keep to myself because I don't know how much she knows about hypnosis. Anyway, this came in from a viewer. Thanks for the ad regarding empowering people. You and that lady are both real estate agents, and I guess you're a hypnotist. It seems like you want to help people, but are you getting paid to do this? If so, who's paying you? If not, what's in it for you? And I'm picking through whatever's sent to me. I'll pick through and pick some of the good ones. Even with this, I can already, I don't know what seems like there's an attitude here, so I'm going to go ahead and address that first. But even from the haters once in a while, if you got something, I may read it online. I'll never expose you, though, so I won't reveal your name or number. So I had to chuckle at this one. No, we're not getting paid for this, and there's no hidden agenda. If you know me, you know that I've been active in the community for a long time. It began about 20 years ago when I first started doing comedy. I was asked to MC church fiestas for free, and maybe I'd get a burrito or a taco or something, but I've always been in the community helping folks fundraise, whether it be a school mariachi or a cancer victim trying to raise money for hospital bills. I'd MC their events. Most recently, within the last 4 years, I've headed out a committee to raise money to erect a statue in honor of a local teacher. So I've always been out there in the mix. There's a long list of my involvement in either of my projects or other people's projects. What attracted me to Martha's brokerage was that she too has a very giving personality. When we reconnected, because she was my student back when she was at Sunnyside, and I run into her because our kids danced together, and then sometimes they played Little League together. So we never really got a chance to talk. When we finally reconnected, we sat down. We found out we had a lot of stuff in common, especially developing programs to help people. Me being a hypnotherapist, not just a hypnotist, I have a clientele that I've already helped overcome personal obstacles along the way. And there's not a better feeling for me than seeing the look of hope on their face when I bring them out of hypnosis or watching the client as they're leaving the session. I mean, they're beaming. They're ready to get on with their lives. They're ready to take on because they just overcame the obstacle that they came to see me for. The podcast Empowering People stemmed from Martha attending a business venture called Empowering Women, and she wanted to get involved. I suggested including everybody. We call it Empowering People, and we teach, counsel, and hopefully motivate others to find their own path to success. That's what this is all about. On the flip side of that coin, though, we both have new businesses and we're trying to promote. Her transition from the insurance business to an entire real estate brokerage, and myself as her first real estate agent in her brokerage, as well as my hypnotherapy business. Down the road, if people see a use for our services, we hope that we can accommodate them, whether it's helping them clean up their credit, sell, or buy a new home, or me helping clients overcome fears and phobias. But for now, everything is coming out of pocket. We do have a great sponsor in Pop Studios, and we'll be soliciting more sponsors as the program expands. If you're interested in sponsoring the program, please let us know. If you have a business that's just getting started, you don't have the funds to do local television, we will help you create commercials here at Pop Studios, of course, with the manager's permission, and at a lower level of finances, just to get you started. If you're interested in sponsoring the program, please let us know. Speaking of that, we want to thank local artist Tanya Tortuga for the beautiful Empowering People logo. She just redid it in color, which was awesome. Chris Kidney and Diego Rivera from Pop Studio, who believe in what we're doing, and the guests coming on our show and donating their time. Speaking of which, we will be back with our first guest after this pause.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave, where did you get this jalopy? No AC? My makeup is melting.
It's got AC. Watch. Roll down the windows and I'll go faster.
You don't have to take such drastic measures when buying a home. At Realty MD, we can show you how to live comfortably while saving to buy a home. Call us now.
Hijuela, I'm sweating manteca.
You ain't called yet?
Welcome back once again to Empowering People. And Martha, I'm going to let you introduce our first guest.
Well, once again, I am going to introduce Chris Bonn, who is a community leader. He has filled many roles in the educational system. He has been an administrator, a teacher, a principal, in 3 states, a superintendent. He is an author, has written 4 books, and now is a motivational speaker consultant. Welcome to our podcast today, Chris. It is an honor.
And I'm going to cut you off. Go ahead and finish that because I want to interject something. Go ahead.
Interject.
Okay. I met Chris while I was teaching at Sunnyside High School. At the time, he was a monitor, and he was out helping out with the football coaching team. But after I left Sunnyside, I've kind of kept tabs on where he became a teacher, right?
Yes.
Were you ever a counselor?
Never a counselor, but teacher.
Teacher, assistant principal?
Assistant principal.
Principal? Assistant to superintendent?
No assistant superintendent.
Right to superintendent.
Right to
So he went from being a school monitor at a high school to the of course, different levels, but to the superintendent of schools in a few different districts as well as a few different states. That is impressive.
Very impressive. And it was from Sunnyside High School.
Yes.
What
Devil.
year? What year?
1990.
Sunnyside Blue Devils, SHS. Here we go. Let's get going
So
now.
welcome, Chris.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we're going to start from the beginning. What inspired you? Now, first of all, let's go back to high school or growing up. You grew up on the South Side, right?
Yep.
What kind of student were you?
You know, I was a good student because the rules said that if I wanted to play football and wrestle, I had to do good in class. So I wasn't dumb, but I wasn't as motivated as I needed to be to do it alone. So because I was surrounded myself with some great people that were always motivating me, encouraging me, and being a little tough with me, my coaches, and the other people that were in those programs with me, I did really well in school because I knew that I wanted to be able to play football. I wanted to be able to be in the weight room. I wanted to be a part of the Sunnyside Wrestling program.
Now, how'd you do in wrestling and football? Were you part of? They had championship teams, right? And
Yeah.
And in the wrestling.
I think
and
1 year, right? Out of the
football
4 years
back
that you
then.
were there?
Well, my senior year, we won the state championship under Coach Richard Sanchez. I placed 4th place at the state tournament. I then went on and was asked to come by Coach Sanchez to coach the football program when he took over, and we won 2 state champions when I coached underneath him at Sunnyside.
Wow. And I went to school with Richard Sanchez, Pueblo High School. I'm just saying. All right,
Well, I
great.
was
So-
a Sunnyside mat mate, just saying. So I think we took state. We took state several years out of the 4 that we were there.
Yes.
And they had strong, back then I remember they had strong wrestling programs as well as
They still
football
do.
programs.
They still do.
Yeah, it's the dynasty. So did you ever get in trouble in school?
Oh yeah, certainly. I got a lot of trouble. That was the problem. Is that when I went to school, unlike what it is now, is when the sports season was over, we typically were like uncaged tigers and did silly things. Like I used to go swimming when I should have been in Miss Hendrix's class, and I remember one time I was shooting water balloons over the second gym and hitting people over in the cafeteria with a water slingshot. So I had my share of being a travieso.
You know, and that's my vivid memory of you, Chris, is walking down the halls with that big buff body, not as communicative as I have seen you and grow through these years. You were kind of shy. At least that was my perspective from back then, that you weren't as outspoken and outgoing communication-wise.
That's right. You guys went to school.
Yeah,
together
we
about
graduated the
time,
same year.
Same year.
Yes.
I
So-
remember that also, and life has taught me that you really need to be able to work and communicate with people. But I will go back thinking about those days because people ask me about that all the time, and a lot of people don't know this about me. But my grandmother and my dad are Mexican, and my mom is Anglo, and of course I'm Gringo, Gabacho, as they call me in Mexico. Very light complected, and my last name is Bonn. So with my Anglo friends, I really never fit in. And with my Hispanic friends, because I didn't have a Spanish surname and didn't speak Spanish at the time, I didn't fit in. The only place I was able to fit in was in athletics and to be involved in sports. So unless you were a mat maid or you were a football player or wrestler, I really didn't communicate much with people because I didn't know what kind of response I was going to get, and I didn't know who I really was. I was searching for sort of an identity, and my identity was being an athlete.
Now, when you were I want to say a bouncer, because that's what I'm thinking. When you were a monitor at Sunnyside, did you have any foresight? I want to do education for the rest of my life. Was that ever part of your thought process?
Well,
or
being
was it-
around with a bunch of students daily, right?
I honestly wasn't going to be. That all happened accidentally, and it was a great accident. I thought I was going to be a police officer. I worked a little bit with Pima County Juvenile Probation as a surveillance officer. I was testing to get into alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I was testing to get into TPD. And because I'm a fool sometimes, and I was a lot younger, I jumped off of the Ramada over at Sam Lena Park, hanging in Piñata, and I literally just jumped off of it. That's not like a normal roof. I think those Ramadas are like 15, 16 feet tall. Landed on my feet, and I shattered my leg.
Oh, my
Dios.
And even then, I still thought I was going to be able to get into the academy because I did qualify, but I couldn't pass the running exam because my leg was still broken. And then that's when that crisis happened over at Desert View High School, where the young man was murdered on campus, and then the district decided to hire a bunch of monitors, and they needed them the next day. And so they went around to both campuses, and they found young football coaches, and I happened to be a coach, and said, would you like a job? We need people to make sure that we don't have any bad people coming on our campuses and hurting our students. And of course, I was a big meathead at that time, and I said, absolutely, I'll do it. And so I became a monitor. And during that tenure, when I was working as a monitor, Mr. Nido gave me several opportunities to do professional development for the teachers, to talk about violence in schools and the trends in gangs and things. But what happened is that they couldn't fill a special ed position for students with severe emotional disabilities. In fact, I know explicitly that they had hired 4 teachers in 8 weeks and they had all quit. And so Mr. Nido said, hey, you working on your bachelor's degree, I know it's not in education, but can I get you an emergency sub and you can help us out in there until we can find somebody?
Wow.
And guess what? I fell in love with it. And I had a great relationship with the students that everybody else gave up on.
Wow. And those of you who don't know, special ed teachers are very, very special because you deal with the kids that have different obstacles they have to overcome. Some are emotional issues, some are learning disabilities. And so you basically have to create lesson plans to individually impact each student. So it's like if you have a class, and they're a little bit smaller classes, if I remember right, but 18 kids, even 18 is a big class for a special ed class. And then you're spending a lot of time with each individual student trying to help them, and it can be overbearing, overcoming, especially dealing with some of the parents and making sure they're involved with. So God bless you for doing
This
that.
was how long ago?
So I started working as a school teacher in 1998. Officially, I was in the classroom in 1995.
With these kids.
Yes.
Okay, so we had a little chat the other day, and I told you what my goal was and wanting to, what we're kind of doing now and wanting to be able to motivational speak because we're going to be doing a conference pretty soon and you're going to be invited. but you stuck the word limbic. Is it limbic?
Limbic system.
Limbic system. So this morning I got done praying, doing my spirituality to get the day going, and I turned YouTube to listen to what it was. And it's the different parts of the brain, right, that have the different emotional releases on how they are affected. So this was back then. Here we see Chris Bonn now in 2023 from 1998. Certainly there has to be some connection with what you shared with me to you being around those kids. What was the big eye opener for you to teach you to think, I want to know what and how people are thinking?
So I think that's a great question. So people always ask me, what have you become an expert at? And I'm not an expert at anything. In fact, I always tell people, if somebody tells you they're an expert at something, run away as fast as you can, because we are always learning. But what I've become a scholar of is human motivational behavior, because the techniques that we learned in college, the techniques that we learn in professional development as teachers didn't work for students that had severe emotional disabilities for whatever reason. I had kids with schizophrenia, I had autism, I had severe cognitive disabilities. I had some of the brightest kids with the highest IQs in the school that just didn't know how to fit in or get along. So part of my not fitting in and getting along, because I didn't know what I belonged to, I sort of could relate to those kids. And so I really started studying the brain, the neurology of the brain. And so that has sort of helped me accelerate in my profession, because I understood something very quickly, is that nobody cares how smart you are. And I know you've all heard that. They want to know how much you care. But I would even take it a step further, that every decision that we make as a human is all related to our emotions. We can get up here right now and prove on paper that if you invest your money in this, you're going to make a lot of money. There's going to be a small percentage of people that are going to stop everything that they do. They're going to go invest their money because they see the data, they see that they want to learn. The other majority of the population is going to do it because they're going to be thinking, if we do a good job of eliciting the limbic system, is, well, what could happen to my children if I don't take care of my finances now? What's going to happen if my house is worth $800,000 and I pass away and it still owes $700,000 on it, and my teenage children don't? See, when you really share people reality with emotions through the limbic system, it elicits a response. And I learned that real quick, is that what gets everybody motivated. Some people like me, I remember my coaches could get in me and fire me up by just telling me, you got to be tougher and you got to be stronger. And there's some people that don't respond to that kind of emotion or that kind of energy. Some people respond more to drawing out, what is it going to be like for your daughter when she's growing up in school? So making sure that, you're putting the right things in place educationally or financially. So I've really used what I learned with those students. And I tell you, they taught me more than I ever taught them. I used that later on as an administrator, because now I'm going into schools, and not only do I have to motivate and generate behaviors from students, but now I have adults. And the one thing about adults is they think they know everything. And then you got to deal with parents that are highly charged and emotional. I always use this saying, I still remember, is that nobody likes their baby to be called ugly. And so when you're calling parents and you're having to give them information like they're not going to pass or graduate, or they have too many absences, they don't receive it well, even though the data tells them. And in fact, my experience would tell you, in most cases, the parents are more upset with the school and blame the schools and blame other people than internalizing it and looking in the mirror, because we don't like our babies to be called ugly. So I had to learn how to engage people to let them know that we're a team here and we care about your kid, and I want your kid to be successful too. So how can we do this collectively as a team? What strategies do you use at home to motivate your child to be successful when they don't want to pick up their room or they don't want to go to bed at the right time? And I started to help embrace that with my faculty and staff. And as a result, I've had a lot of success in the schools that I've worked in.
And communication's the key, and you're a listener. Transitioning from high school, where the talk back then for around the Sunnyside Wrestlers and the Sunnyside team was, suck it up, don't be a wuss, get it done. I don't want to do it, get it done, right? And that was a talk that I heard from Richard Sanchez, from Cole Strack, from all the coaching I shared the other day about Colstrack. He told me women were no good for nothing. He's the one that taught me how to weight lift, and he's the one that taught me to endure. So that is ingrained. Suck it up. Don't be a wuss. You can do anything, right? Transitioning now to where you're at, I can see it.
And to piggyback on that, tough football player, tough wrestler, tough on the kids as a monitor, having to say, hey, get out of here. You're not supposed to be in here. And when did you
Understanding now.
realize that, or how did you overcome that aggression or that
To transition
to
into
transition into
understand.
dealing with parents?
Yes.
And because I know as an educator, and I was an administrator for a couple of years, I went back into teaching because as an administrator, I couldn't deal with the older kids. I couldn't deal with the adults, the parents, and some of the teachers, and having to reprimand them, and then having to listen to them defend why I'm reprimanding them, and think, what don't you get here? That drove me crazy, and I was never the type to be able to bite my tongue. When did you learn to do that? At what point in your career?
I'm still learning to do that. I still bite my tongue all the time. Sometimes I do things and say, well, I wish I wouldn't have said that. But I will say something, and hopefully I can teach somebody in the audience something today. We always talk about having compassion for people, and we all want to be compassionate people. Whether you're a Christian or you're a Jew, we all want to be compassionate people. We're taught that from a young age. But one thing that I learned over the years is that it is impossible, in fact, there's neurology behind this, that you cannot have compassion without empathy. And empathy is to be able to put yourself in the shoes of those people and what they must be experiencing and dealing with before you can have compassion for them.
Ditto.
So we're missing a piece here. Mm-hmm. And so what I've really, and I'm going to tell you what really opened my eyes to it, and I don't want to belabor on it a lot today, but I went through I used to be a hang 'em high Joe Arpaio kind of guy. Pack your toothpaste, you're going to prison, and, let them all die and God will sort them out kind of guy. And I learned right away when I went through my own trials and tribulations with the media and some bad things that were happening, I was behaving as what I believe a father should behave. And I did what I thought. And in fact, I wasn't thinking much at that time. I just reacted. And the media had a really nice heyday with me. And I had a couple choices. And I realized at that point, what I was experiencing is what a lot of the students that I was dealing with experienced. They stub their toe and they deal with it for the rest of their life because people don't let them out of that environment. They don't embrace them. They don't encourage them.
They're
they
tagged.
don't lift them up. And I said, at that point in my life is when I said, I won't be one of those people. Things are going to happen in life. I still have bad things happen in my life today. I just had to take my truck in to get the rack and pinion changed. But you know what? I'm not going to let it ruin my day. I'm going to choose my attitude to this day. And I'm not going to be mad at the people because they're just doing their job when they give me a price quote. It's a business. And that has changed me. Before, I used to go into those businesses and scream and yell because it was too expensive.
It's human behavior, right? Human behavior and how, as a human, we naturally react. You know what taught me how to think differently was I read the book, The Secret. One year I was going to go party in Mexico because that's what I would do. I'd work 10 days a month and then go to Mexico, and I had to go get my tires checked and do the oil change. Well, they tell me, Miss, you have four tires that need to be changed. It's going to be this much. What? This is my spending money on the beach, right? And I could not let go of, I cannot believe I had to spend $1,200 on freaking tires. I cannot believe. Years later, when I read the book, and I'm a huge believer in manifestation and creating the mood, right? I understood in one of the chapters that now I had children, right? And I was thankful that somebody pointed out that the tires needed to be replaced because now I was traveling 8 hours. God forbid something happens and I'm with my children. So now I can appreciate, and I learned too, not to react. So now if I go to the tire shop and they tell me I need new tires, show me. Can you show me? I want to see. And I completely understand. So I think for many of us, we react without thinking. We calm down, we pause, and we realize we shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done this. I many times text, and don't send the text off because I'm furious. Delete it. I'm calmed down now. But
I do that. Write letters.
you calm down, but it's human behavior, and it's really hard to learn that. For somebody who learns how to control themselves, we're gonna receive, a payment, bills in the mail. Deal with it. I remember that I wrote my first secret check this year. One of my commission checks this year is gonna be da da da, and I pasted it on my wall on a board, and I accomplished it, right? From the book, The Secret. So I picked little bits and pieces of the how the human reacts and manifestation and setting your goals through that book. So that is pretty awesome. And it's hard because you're talking to yourself, you want to do this, but you're calming yourself down to react and see it in a different way, because it's not going to change. A lot of this stuff you don't have control over, right?
And as a superintendent, I'm sure that you had many assessors where you were fried by the media, or you had adversity coming at you from different ends. The incident that Chris is talking about specifically is something that happened to Tucson, those of us that know. And in Chris's defense, I don't think there's a father in the world that wouldn't have done the same thing that he did. Unfortunately, there was repercussions of that. But what intrigued me and inspired even myself, and that I'm really, really in awe of, is that it didn't slow Chris down. Where did you go after Tucson? Where did you end up? Because I want to hear about Mexico. I understand you spent some time in Mexico. You speak Spanish now. And that freaked me out because...
¿Cuál es tu pasión, Christopher Bonn? ¿Cuál es tu pasión?
So I left Tucson and I got the superintendent job in Sonoyta Elementary. And the 4 years that I was there, we won the A-plus School of Excellence Award, the smallest school in the 106-year history of the award to ever win it. And the nice thing about winning that award, and those of you that have been in education would know this, the principal doesn't write it, the superintendent doesn't write it. It has to be written by the students, the parents, and the teachers of the organization.
Oh, wow, that says
So
it. That
I
says
had
a lot.
I had no input into that award. It is a very prestigious award. In fact, if your kids go to a school, if you know schools that have that sign up in front of their schools, it is, and it's being evaluated by other educators that have won the award. So it is so hard to get it. And so we won it. And then I left there, and it was right during Red for Ed. Obviously, superintendent is always a scapegoat. Our previous governor had passed 20% raises for teachers, which I was hooray, 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 because our teachers need more than 20%, and I'm a pro-teacher person. But what they didn't tell anybody in the media was that he mandated 20% raises but didn't give us the budget to give the raises. So in order to give teachers raises, we had to lay off staff.
Oh, my God.
And when you work in a small rural community, the majority of your staff is what? Locals. And if they don't work, they can't afford their houses. They can't contribute to the economy. So superintendents are often the lightning. They call us the lightning rod, and the best way to keep lightning from hitting the building is to remove the lightning rod. And so they'll tell you that a lot of times is that, we teach people. I mentor all superintendents all over the United States, Mexico, Canada, and I tell them that if you go into this profession, understand, and because it's going to happen, you're going to be the lightning rod, and you will become the scapegoat, and the easiest way for the situation to resolve itself is to remove the superintendent, and it happens. It's just the life expectancy of a school superintendent is 2.5 years. You're hired by usually a different board that you finish with, and so if you're willing to do that and you're willing to make those kinds of sacrifices, because moving gets difficult. Now there's a lot of people that stay in the industry for a long time, but they just sit back and ride the wave, or they're in really, really good organizations. But even then, you always come up against controversy. We have kids that commit suicide. We have guns on campuses. We have, teachers that do horrible things. We have, budget cuts. There's always something coming up, and our job is to try to mitigate those circumstances so that the organization can still flourish and function for the benefit of our kids and our community.
So talking about gun control, we see all these shootings at different schools that continue and continue and continue. Like, we know there's the gun laws. Something has to be done with that. But how do you handle gun control in a school? I mean, I'm assuming it's costly and you need the budget for that, let alone we're talking about how you handled the 20% increase, but didn't have the money there, and you had to let go of all the staff, right? How do you handle that situation? But I think right now, most importantly, is, how do we handle gun control in the schools?
I'm actually glad you asked that question. So I'm going to give you a whole different perspective that you probably haven't heard. I watch this because, as you know, I'm a consultant. So I provide consulting services all over the United States for superintendents and principals when they're going through crisis mode. That's what I don't do a whole lot of curriculum instruction, even though I'm really good at it. What's lacking in our schools is, what do you do when you have a kid hang themselves in front of your office? What do you do when you find guns on your campus, or you have an intruder, or there's all kinds of things that happen in schools all over the nation. You see it on the news. What I'm going to say is this: in every one of those cases, I've monitored them very closely, and then I've been a consultant on a few of them. They knew that kid had the potential to come in and be a mass shooter or do harm. They had, in every one of those cases, those individuals were known about. They were reported to the authorities. They tried to seek mental health services for those individuals, whether they be kids or outsiders around that campus. And we do not have good mental health services in the United States. Mm-hmm. People can check themselves into mental health and check themselves out the next day, whether they're healthy or not. Same with chemical dependency and substance abuse. Wow. There's a case in the United States right now, and everybody will remember it, and I won't bring it up because I do not believe in living in the past, but we got to learn, where the gentleman was walking around petting a dead and carrying a dead cat for 5 days prior to entering the school building and shooting it up. Yes. It was reported to the crisis team in this community. It was reported to the police. Everybody tried to do what they can, but the laws don't allow for us to get people the services they need unless they volunteer to do it. Unfortunately, those people are not at the mental capacity to volunteer. And unfortunately, those people, all of them, the law enforcement, mental health services, crisis team, and the school did everything they could do in their power, and yet none of them could do anything collectively to stop that. It's tragic what's happening. We need to not just look at, and I'm not even going to get into the gun control, even if we limit guns, if we don't deal with the mental health situation that we have in this country and get people help. And I'm going to tell you, I'm of the opinion that we should maybe investigate whether it should all be voluntary services now. If they could volunteer to go in and get help, they probably would have gotten help, but they don't. And so when somebody recognizes that something's not normal behavior and it could possibly harm other people.
So our teachers, our educators now getting, are they learning? Are they going through training on how to recognize signs and taking the different step to take different measures other than, there was a guy walking with a dead cat petting somebody. Did somebody not see that as?
They reported it. They got threat assess training. They reported it, but the police couldn't do anything about it because they tried to commit that individual, but the individual signed themselves out of the treatment center. And the mental health people tried to get a court order to keep the individual there, but the judge in that state was only allowed to detain that individual for 72 hours. And the end result of a lack of efficiency or common sense, whatever you want to call it, is these poor children and families are devastated. They'll never recover from that. The community, the parents, the other children.
Well, that's still even that's still even scary. I mean, my kids are in college, and that shooting with that teacher happened.
That's a
right?
second one on
the
campus.
second one, I get the alerts, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where are you guys at? Are you guys in class? Are you walking towards your car? Where are you? That is a very scary feeling for all parents of children of all age.
And I will tell you, who was the scapegoat in all of these recent shootings at schools? It was the superintendent and the principal, and they did everything that was allowable by the law, but it's easy to brush over. See, we're never going to get to fixing the problem until we really address the problem. It really wasn't the principal or the superintendent or the teacher. They all did what they were supposed to do. The law enforcement did what they were allowed to do by law. We really need to get our legislators to say that when people are not healthy and competent to take care of themselves and they could potentially be a harm to others, then you need to get some kind of mental health services. And I know that's controversial because we're in a system where we don't believe anybody should be detained without their permission, but there's a lot of, and I see it all the time, even driving around Tucson. Everybody that's listening knows when they see people and they know, wow, something's not right there, and I feel uncomfortable, and and there's those blatant ones. Again, I mean, somebody walking around with a dead cat, that should have been, the kid that shot the kindergarten teacher had strangled the teacher 3 weeks prior to that. They tried to deal with it through policies, procedures in the legal system and mental health system. Nobody could do anything, and then the kid shows up to school and shoots the teacher, who's now going to be permanently disabled for the rest of their life, but more importantly, traumatized all of the kids and the staff that work there. And then it bloodies the nose of our public education systems in the United States, because everybody thinks they're unsafe places to send kids. But if we really want to fix the problem, we really need to look at the laws and legislation that we currently have. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of debate right now about, making guns, but that doesn't solve the problem with mental health in this country or chemical dependency, because some of the mental health we're seeing right now is because of the overuse of crystal methamphetamine and fentanyl and bath salts and all those things. It's ruining the brains of these people, and then they can't think straight. So should they be out on the street potentially putting our children or you and me at harm?
Have your political
Wow.
views changed over the years, from your younger days to now?
Yes, they have. So I used to be I would say about 20 years ago, I would have been a staunch, they used to be the Tea Party, now it's MAGA. But I can tell you, I've become more moderate than ever before, because I see the radicalness on both sides of the equation to be very problematic. There has to be some common sense. I think we need to get back to a position where we can take the best of both sides' ideas and figure out how they can work best for this country. But right now, I think what it is a sort of like cult behavior. If you believe in one party, you have to accept all their views, ideas, and opinions, or you're considered a traitor or an outsider. And I think it happens on both sides of the spectrum. So in education, I see it happen all the time. Again, a perfect example was when they passed raises for all the teachers, but then tell the public that we were gonna have to lay off staff to pay for those. I had teachers literally come to me and say, I will surrender my raise so that I don't have to lose my teacher assistant or a custodian or a grounds or a cafeteria worker, because they knew that when those people leave, then guess who's gonna have to clean up vomit in the classroom? Guess who's gonna have to give up their lunches to do playground duty and cafeteria duty? They get it. And but we couldn't, because it was made into legislation. And so our legislators come out with policies, procedures, and laws, governance on that, but guess who was the scapegoat at the end? It's the leadership. And I wasn't the only one. I mean, I have a lot of friends now from multiple states where I work that suffer the same kind of fate, because when things don't go right, we don't go back and talk to our legislators and our politicians, or even our media, because our media is one-sided, whether we want to believe it or not. And it influences the way people behave in a society. So I do my best to try to educate people, but most importantly, just keep a good attitude, because people want to be around people with good attitudes.
Wow. With that, we're going to take a quick break and be back with Mr. Chris. Is it Dr. Bonn?
Yes.
Dr. Chris Bonn, who went from a monitor all the way to a superintendent in a couple districts. He's going to tell us more about when he left Elgin and books that he's written. And I still want to hear about Mexico. We'll be back after this quick pause. Hey, Martha, I hear that new buyer that we're closing just bought a brand new truck.
What?
That's what I heard.
A brand new truck?
Yep, that's what I heard.
Let's turn around.
Wow, I'm just kidding. He didn't buy anything. Jeez. Ow.
You bump my head? That's not funny.
That's a little bit funny.
Additional debt can kill a deal. Let Realty MD guide you through the process of buying a home. Call us now.
Ow! You ain't called yet? Welcome back to Empowering People. We have Dr. Chris Bonn with us, who's going to finish off. I mean, we even during the break, we're getting schooled on a whole lot of different stuff. Dr. Bonn, again, tell us, once you left, and I think we fell into that question,
Yes.
we moved on.
Yes.
Once you left Elgin, where did you go? And what you were talking on during the break, figure out how you want to mix that in there, because I think it's powerful.
Well, so I went to Northern California, Fort Sage Unified School District, which was a product of the Brackett Commission. If you don't know what the Brackett Commission was, is when the United States government downsized military installations. A lot of military installations had their own school systems. And mind you, guess who attended those schools? It was the military brats. It was the brass. It was their kids. They had barracks there. They had housing in there. So at one time in history, Fort Sage Unified School District was what we would call a country club school. It was one of the elite of the elites, not only in athletics, but academics. During the Brackett Commission, what they did was they just rolled the fence back. So everything on the outside of the fence became property of the community and the town, including the contamination, all of the stuff that goes on in military installations, because that's where they detonate all the World War II ammunition. That's where they go to dispose of it. So you can imagine what was going on there. So they gave it to a town that doesn't have a town council, doesn't have taxation, has nothing, and now you have to take care of all of the schools and the children with no budget that was once being taken care of by the military. So the school hadn't been renovated in years. It was old, asbestos filled. And then the barracks on the outside that used to belong to the brass, they ended up selling to the community members for very, very cheap. So if you lived in California and you wanted to find affordable housing, guess what you did? You went and bought all the old military housing. And so what happened is it went from a very affluent community or upper middle class to very impoverished community. But the problem is that they didn't have money to run the schools. Academics started to dwindle. So I was recruited to go up there and get them, one, get them fixed financially, and two, to help them with their academics, which actually they work both simultaneously. I worked there for a couple years, did a really good job. Our enrollment went up, took over 2 charter schools in the system. Just really did a good job. We were fully staffed. But during that year, I found a teacher that had been working in the district for 40 years that was embezzling $220,000 a year.
My goodness.
And that was why they went from a $10 million funding pool to deficit funding, and they only had about $2 million left. This person was a very highly influential person in the organization. So I did what I needed to do, reported it to the state. Everything was handled appropriately, and I knew the writing on the wall because she was the largest landlord in the community, and she was going to, in fact, she actually convinced some of her tenants to get free rent to run for the governing board. So I was being recruited by several states, Wyoming, New Mexico, Washington, Oregon, and I took a job in Raton, New Mexico.
I know Raton.
So, and I really loved it up there. I think I would like to retire there, at least buy a vacation home there someday.
Yeah,
Spent a lot of time in the Denver, Colorado Springs area. Amarillo, Texas is real near. Albuquerque, Santa Fe, a lot of snow. Those of us desert folks that love snow, you love snow until you have snow from October until June. And then I thought I was smart, and I'm like, why do you got to shovel snow? You can just walk on top of it until it freezes at night. There's no walking on top of it.
Ay Dios, I'm already cold.
Yeah, so I had spinal surgery when I was there, and I also got COVID twice. And you keep asking me about Mexico, so I'll introduce. My wife is Catalina, and she lives in Nogales, Sonora. She is documentally qualified to come to the United States, but because of all the immigration amnesty that's going on, they've pulled all of those officers, and because of COVID closures, because it only happens in Juarez for family visas. So we've been waiting for the last 4 years. So she's qualified. We just got to get the stamp on the visa. And as soon as she does, but they did grant her an emergency visa to come and care for me during the surgery because I had a spinal surgery and I couldn't walk. Couldn't even bathe myself or use the restroom. So they let her come. But of course it was only temporary and she had to go back. So we have a house in Nogales, Sonora. So I work and live here during the week, and then on the weekends I go home. And we also had a house in Guadalajara, which I loved immensely. But when I was flying back to work to leave her in a whole different state in Mexico, different culture, because it is different in Guadalajara than it is in Sonora, she just asked if she could go back with her family, which is in Nogales, Sonora, because it was just too difficult for her, me flying in and out all the time. And being
Which
stuck.
is close to Tucson.
Yeah, and I can drive, but believe it or not, Guadalajara was sort of nice because when I was living on the reservation in Babaquiri, which was where I retired out of and finished, it was actually 2.5 hours to go to Nogales, and with gas prices and everything it was actually easier for me to jump on a plane in Phoenix for $100 and flying round trip to Guadalajara and come home. And I had a nicer house. I had a pool, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I had a gated community. I had a spa. For About $200 a month. I mean, you can't beat that. All my neighbors were dentists and doctors over there. So I actually love Guadalajara.
And how long were you in Guadalajara?
A year.
A year.
We were there for a year. I loved it. It's so much less expensive there too than the border towns. You know, you can eat 5 tacos de barbacoa, 20 pesos, and you know, down here I pay 45 pesos for one taco. You know?
Yes. Chris, so, okay, you shared a lot about your educational field. Where did the transition come to become a motivational speaker consultant? And now you're dealing with adults.
You know, again, this all happened accidentally. I was recently, when I decided to retire, I was going to take some jobs internationally because international superintendents make a fortune and it's tax-free money. So I was being headhunted to go to China and Qatar. And I actually went to the superintendent's conference in San Antonio in February, and the owner of a school met me from Qatar. And we were talking about budget and stuff. And when I was meeting with all my friends and colleagues from all over the United States, because I do mentor for the National Association for Latin School Administrators, also for, you know, the different universities here, Grand Canyon. So when people are getting their doctorate or they decide they're going to be a superintendent and stuff, they usually assign them a mentor. So I've mentored people all over. So I see them a lot of times at the superintendent conference. And what they said to me was this: what we really need right now, and you should consider this, is we need somebody that can help talk us through crisis. You've been through it all. You've had suicides. You've been in school shootings. You've had teachers do bizarre things. You've lived through some. We need somebody to coach us through this. And you just always have such a positive attitude. You've taken over schools that were in the bottom 5% of schools in the entire United States, and you're getting some of the most prestigious awards, and yet you're not in these schools very long. So how are you doing it? And we really need somebody to do that. You should be a consultant. We would hire you. You should come and speak to our staffs and our teachers because we would bring you in. So I started it. I hired a marketing company. I started my LLC, and it didn't go anywhere. I was starting to panic. And something that's about me is I just don't sit around, cry about spilled milk. I just move on. It's just, I mean, you guys see that in me. So it's going to happen. So I had about 6 or 7 contracts on my computer to sign to go work international. I've been solicited to go to Wyoming again. Colorado's been really hot on me lately. Washington's really been hot, asking me to go in and clean up their schools. And because I didn't have a job and I don't have constant income coming in, I'm like, I'm going to sign. And I've been working with a lot of people that just say, you know, just be patient. You got to believe it's going to happen. You need to write yourself the privacy check. I did, because I know what I need to make to be able to sustain my sense of living. So while I was waiting, I started writing books. And I was asked to write a book, sort of like using the format of Who Moved My Cheese. If you've ever done leadership, it's a kid's book. And it's real easy to read. You can read it in 10 minutes. And all the superintendents said, you know, I wish somebody would come back and write books like Who Moved My Cheese, because we're so busy, we don't have time to read a 400-page book. And I thought about it. And I said, the first principle that I wrote about is the best way to kill monsters is to stop feeding them. Because what I realized in my career is no matter how much we try to convince other people and defend our actions and behaviors, you're not going to change their mind. It's just a waste of energy. It's demoralizing. It's demeaning. And what if I could teach other principals and other superintendents and even children how to do it? So I wrote a children's book. And in fact, the people that have all been buying it have all been adults. It's actually doing very, very well. You can buy it on Amazon. So that was real simple. So then I wrote like another 15 or 20, but I'm working with a publisher, and the publisher's like, you don't want to release all your books too quick because there's principles in each one of them. My next book that I'm going to release on that model is When Brave Warriors Stumble, Cowards Rejoice. And the next book after that is going to be To Water Flowers, Not Weeds. Because we just are in a society and a culture, our media, everything that we see, we just focus and funnel all of our energy and attention to negativity, feeding monsters. Then I just wrote a book that just got released, and I'm actually going to be keynote on it. It's called The Good, the Bad, the Invisible: How to Deal with Cheerleaders, Dinosaurs, and Submarines. So I'd say that in every organization, you have your cheerleaders. You know, people think that the cheerleaders are there for the athletes. We don't hear them. I love you, Martha, to death, and we're good friends. But I never heard the mat mates.
Gosh darn it. And I was pounding hard
But
up
you know
there
who-
for
but
you
know
guys.
Who they're getting fired up? The audience.
The crowd.
The crowd. Their crowd. That's their job. That's their role. And even when you're losing, guess what? They're pounding. They're celebrating. They're cheering. And so I, as a leader, love cheerleaders in my organization. And
We
so-
spoiled you guys
so-
back
so-
then.
So how do you support your cheerleaders? Because they're always under attack, aren't they?
Yep.
And so I wrote a book about that. But then in an organization, you have dinosaurs. So I wrote a book about not feeding monsters. Well, dinosaurs is the same thing. But see, dinosaurs don't scare me because dinosaurs are big, loud, ugly. They growl. You know they're dangerous. So you always have a strategy. You can run. You can hide. You can figure out ways that you can defeat them or don't feed them because if they get hungry and starve, they die. So, but we put so much energy in organizations into dealing with dinosaurs. And then the last one, which is the one I'm quite worried about, is submarines. And those are the people that on the surface, they appear to be that they're your buddy, they're your friend, they're supportive. And as soon as they submerge or they leave you, guess what are they doing? They're sabotaging you. And so I wrote a book about that in leadership. And you know, it's funny. I was just doing a keynote on this the other day, and a bunch of people came up to me and they said, you know what? I figured out who all my submarines are. I said, no, you didn't, because you'll never figure out who your submarines are. What you have to do is make sure that you take care of your integrity, you do the best possibly that you can, and that you support your cheerleaders instead of putting all your energy in trying to figure out who your submarines are, because you're never going to figure out who they are. Because on the surface, they're your teammate, but below the surface, they're sending torpedoes. And so
Wow.
So I've really been working on that. So that was my last book. And then because of my work in literacy, I know both of you don't know this, but I have some of the highest literacy scores in the United States. So usually when I take over a school, they're below the national average, which is 34% literacy, which is horrible. That means 66% of our students in the United States can't read or write. Okay, but we always use the terms 34. In the schools that I take over, it's below the 5%. I usually have anywhere from 10 to 28% growth, and I've done it in every state. So I've been doing a lot of work. In fact, I just presented this morning and yesterday on how to increase reading comprehension by teaching fluency. And so people were asking me to present on that. So I wrote a book on how to use karaoke to teach fluency. And if you improve fluency, guess what happens? Your comprehension goes up. It's fun, though, because you got the text on the screen. You have to work on your accuracy, your rate, your pitch, and your phrasing to be able to sing the song appropriately. You're having a whole lot of fun. You laugh and you smile. But you know what the side was from that? Is my classes at Bavakivi started doing that, and their attendance rates started going up. So we went from having
were
in some
having
classes
fun.
like
Wow.
68% to above 95%. My enrollment went up. In fact, I got called into an office, and I'll never forget this. I got called into the office back in November. They were upset with me because kids were leaving the BIE schools on the nation to come to Bavakivi Unified because we were having so much fun in our school. And, you know, I didn't want that to happen because they have teachers and their administrators are well respected. But that says something that we fixed not only with using karaoke, we not only fixed the literacy problem, we increased our enrollment and our student attendance.
That is so cool.
Right, and
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I can also, as a music teacher, I could see where that would work because not only with fluency and everything else, but it's teaching them rhythm of phrasing. I never thought about that. Singing a karaoke song, you learn how to sing the song. So with that, it's going to help, definitely help literacy.
I did that with my kids when they had to take a test and they had to remember the 50 states, right? I gave them the beat and then we'd be practicing, sing me the song. And they had all the states in the song. So I can relate to both of you guys. And we just got to think out of the box sometimes, right? The stuff is in front of us and somebody has to implement us to try it. What is, Chris Bonn, there's so much seriousness. Describe yourself in one word in a fun setting, and also tell us your why. What keeps you going? What's your passion? What's that motor?
You know, in one word, I'm risky. I'm not afraid to take risks. There's a great video. You're all going to watch it after I tell you about it. It was Will Smith talking about skydiving. Like the best things happen on the opposite side of fear. And that's why we never get to greatness, because we're so scared. In fact, I would tell people that ask me what has been my key to success if it isn't creating a little uncomfort, if it isn't creating a little fear, you're not being risky enough, or you're not being adventurous enough, because the best things are going to happen on the opposite side of fear. And I love to use that video. I use it a lot in my presentations. So I'm really risky. And my why is because, and I'm just going to say, I'll say this to you guys in the room. So I speak for the National Association for Latin School Administrators and Superintendents. In fact, I just did some leadership work for their affiliates that are starting in New Jersey. I'll be doing the one in the New England, Wisconsin. I just got back from Denver. I'll be doing some work in Nevada. But the thing that I have found out in my career is instead of building other people up, all we do is step on their throats.
Yep.
And as a Latino male, we eat our own children. And I mean that full-heartedly. It's funny, when I was a school superintendent, even the school superintendents around here had me on speed dial. We're always talking. The minute I stopped working as a superintendent, I can't even get them to return a text message or call me on the telephone. I applied to be a substitute. I have a PhD. I applied to be a substitute because I figured, I got some spare time on my hand. When I'm not writing a book, let me help out my colleagues in Tucson. And the only school district that called me to come and sub for them was Tucson Unified School District. And it broke my heart because I'm an alumni of Sunnyside High School. I want to give back to my community. And I can't even get a phone call back from them. And I don't know the reason. But when I was a superintendent, they couldn't get enough of me. And we have businesses in Tucson, and we don't promote them. I'm doing a commercial. I'm doing some work with a company out of Israel. They're looking for a studio to do a commercial using me. And they were going to fly me up to Phoenix to do it. Well, guess what? I found these guys. I sent them because I want to give them business. They're in our community. But instead, we have this that if somebody's doing something successful in our community, it must be because they're doing something illegally. I'm going to share something with you. I don't think people know this. Do you know that there's no Fortune 500 companies in the United States that are Latino-owned?
I was unaware of that.
Did you know that there's no Latino-owned bank in the United States? Do you know that we don't have a historically Latino college or community college system in the United States? But all the other cultures have one. And you know why we don't have one? Because the minute we open a bank, Latinos wouldn't put their money there because we would say things like, well, the only reason Latinos own a bank is because they're connected to the mafia or the cartels. Okay? All they're going to be teaching is critical race theory in a Latino college. So we're not going to open a Latino college. All the other cultures of the world have one. And the thing that really struck me is I'm a motivational speaker. I've been speaking for quite some time. I've done some work in the private sector, a lot of work in the private sector prior to right now. But I would get called to get proposals from me to be a motivational speaker, let's say in Chicago and for a Latino organization. And they all know I'm Latino because I work for the National Latino Association. And they would say, well, what's your price? I give them my price. And I know I always come in under because I know what everybody charges because I'm not doing it to make money, but I got to pay my mortgage, And I find out later that they hired some Anglo guy to talk about uniting and building up Latinos to be leaders and professionals. And so I have decided that I'm doing this because I want our kids to be successful. They're going to stumble and fall. In fact, I will tell you that the times that I have stumbled and fallen have taught me the greatest lessons. The best lessons that you learn are the ones that make you bleed. And if it wasn't for those things, I don't think I would have had the success that I have now. But you have to be willing to take a risk and be a little uncomfortable. We're so okay with being comfortable, and then we wonder why things still stay the same. We're broke. Why are we broke? Well, do something a little bit differently. Get up earlier in the morning. Do a side job. Have a side hustle. Maybe you need to change profession. I read a great book I would recommend to everybody. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. And
Feel the fear and do it anyways.
It talks about how people don't change in life because we fear losing control. And so what I want to do is I want to empower other leaders. I want to empower children. I don't believe change takes 3 years, 3 to 5 years. Change can happen overnight. It takes 3 to 5 years to make it a habit. And so what we do is we're like, oh, it's okay. It didn't happen. It's going to come up in 3 years. It'll happen in 3 years. Well, there's a lot of good and bad things that can happen in 3 years, missed opportunities. So why not just change and then build it into your behavior so that it becomes routine, it becomes habit forming, and be willing to change multiple times because sometimes you have to do things through trial and error. I worked with a lady yesterday on a system on how to use AI in schools to help people organize their time and be more efficient. It was the first time we did it. Guess what we're going to go back and do today? We're going to modify and change it, even though we met 5 or 6 times before we present, because we learn new things, but we get comfortable, we get complacent, we don't want to change. And so I just say that you have to be uncomfortable with taking risks. If you're doing that, then you know you're on the verge of something great.
Wow. And Dr. Bonn, we got to thank you
Impressive.
again for coming on our show. We're about out of time.
I just think
we
one
need to
more
have
question.
him come back.
Something fun. What fun thing do you like to do or activity outside of work?
You know, my whole day is fun. So I love to dance. So I country dance, salsa merengue. I love to cook. The Filipino teachers taught me how to do karaoke. I'm horrible at it, but I love to see people laugh at me. So I love to do a lot of things. Life is fun.
¿Cuáles son tus tacos favoritos?
Barbacoa.
Barbacoa. There you go, Dave. There you go. Impressive. An
Again,
awesome
I
community
think we got to
leader.
have him back
You do?
sometime. This particular episode, I think, we do empowering people for anybody that wants change, and the average Joe is going to get something out of everything that you said. What would you suggest would be good airplay for educators and administrators to see this particular podcast, other than YouTube? We put it on a YouTube. Is there a place that you think we should suggest it to? Because
Facebook. I don't know if you guys know this statistic, but 70% of the working population spends 90% of their day on Facebook, TikTok, or Snapchat.
I know I do.
70% of the working population.
I just
spend
congratulated
90%.
this morning for reaching 2,000 posts. The posts, right? I was all like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I'm posting every freaking day. In the morning when you were calling, I was in bed still doing my post.
I know.
I
that's
got
why I
up,
called.
then I started to going into my spirituality. And then I get in the car and I'm listening to a YouTube video so that I can be listening to something. So you're right. We just got to spread the word. You were phenomenal. We're going to have you back.
Yes.
Right. And I know that people who are going to watch this podcast, they're just going to be blown away.
Especially Sunnyside alumni.
Oh,
So
I loved. I want to tell you, I was sitting out there listening to you read your letter. I love it because there's going to be haters.
Oh, there's always going to, I've had haters all my life.
And that's why I wrote the book, Quit Feeding the Monsters. Because you know what? How often do you try to defend yourself and, well, you don't know what I've done and how much money I donate to charity. And there's always going to be a hater out there. And it's like, I know society calls them Karens, but it's just like, the other day I was doing a presentation up in, I think it was in Phoenix. And we were talking about that topic about how Latinos step on each other's throats. We do. If you don't know that, we do that.
Well, it's the ladder, right? Where they're pushing each other down just to go up.
It's bad. I've never, because I work with the African-American Administrators Association. I'm a consultant for them too. They are all about picking. If somebody loses their job, they take them out to steak dinner. They're like, hey, I have an interim position here. Can you fill in? And they all take care of each other's back. The minute, and I'll say this, I'm a Sunnyside guy. So Gastelum, I was his mentor when he got the superintendent job. Okay? When I stopped working at Babakiri, he called me at least once a week, twice a week. Hey, Bonn, what would you do in this situation with this? Hey, my board's doing this. What would you do? And so, and I trained him. He started with me. I was his boss. And as soon as I stopped being a superintendent, doesn't call me back, doesn't return my text. And I don't ask for anything. I just, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Just being friendly. Hasn't. And of course, I always try to tell myself it's just because he's really busy, but I know what it really is.
Well, you know what? It's like me posting on Facebook, right? I have so many people. We know so many people. The minute that they see, Martha Dabdoub is doing this, and I went to school with them. I went to Sunnyside with them without mentioning names. I see them liking other similar stories, and mine is, I'm sure they see it. I'm sure they read it.
There's
they move
haters,
on, and
but
I'm
you know
like,
what?
okay.
You just got to just keep, because it's all the other thousands of people that are doing something
Yeah,
or other.
you're right. And I'm thick-skinned since I think I was born thick-skinned because I was dealing with this all my life. Even in junior high, you're with my boyfriend. And I'm like, I'm not even allowed to have a boyfriend. I have a Latino dad, right? So thank God I was thick-skinned. Bernadette Rostenhausler, we have a story for when she comes on board too.
We still stay in really good contact.
Yes. And so she's another wonderful person that we'll be having soon. But being thick-skinned, is something that has given us the opportunity.
It still hurts though. It still bothers you, but you just gotta.
But you fall and you get back up, and okay, I'm
But
okay.
it's just, I just loved your comment about it. Like you just said it. You just called it out. You just called it out. You just do it. So I was presenting up in Phoenix. We were talking about how hard it is. Like in New Jersey, it's the 5th largest Latino community in the United States.
Wow.
In Jersey.
Jersey is, okay? 800 languages, but the 5th largest Latino community. So they just started an affiliate group. There's only 4 superintendents in the whole state that are Latino. They're Latinas, 1 Latino. And I think of the whole state, you're talking thousands of school districts, right? They think they have 15 principals. So they start an affiliate group. I go in and do this work about how there's unity in numbers, and you can have better empathy for kids that came from a lot like your similar backgrounds. And so I'm doing this whole presentation. So then I get asked to do a presentation for like teachers and stuff. I typically don't do a lot of that stuff, but so I was like, okay, so we're doing the same conversation. And I said, it is already difficult if you're an ethnic person to get a leadership role in the United States, but it's even worse because there's research on it called the glass ceiling syndrome for if you're a female. And that's how I said it. I said, and if you're a female, this Karen jumps up in the meeting and starts ripping me. You will not use the phrase female ever again in front of this audience. I'm offended, I'm appalled, and I don't know anything because I'm not into that whole, I should be, but I'm not into that he, she, and all that stuff. If you look
Hershey.
yeah, I just so
The whole nother.
and I'm trying to like calm her down, and I'm trying to, and then I just right in the middle because she doesn't stop. She hijacked my whole presentation, and I'm like, I'm not going to get this done. And these guys are all watching to see what kind of leader I'm going to be. And I finally said, I apologize that I did it. I won't make that same mistake again. If you want to talk to me after this, I'll stay around. But sit down, Karin. And she slammed out of the room, and everybody stood up in the audience and started applauding me. I think the world is they're
Wow.
looking for people to say the things that they're all afraid to say. And it was uncalled for. Yeah, did I make a mistake? Should I be a little bit culturally sensitive? I sort of disagree with that to some extent. Like, it was an accident. I wasn't doing it on purpose. But I apologized, and it wasn't enough. And she hijacked this whole great presentation. And the whole presentation was about unifying and supporting one another and not stepping. And she was a Latina. And I was even it was talking about it. We need to be here for our sisters too, And she was just, boom, boom, and I had it. And I was
She's
like,
probably not open-minded. You have to
Well,
be
so-
open-minded to try and understand or see
And
every
some folks
side.
are just looking for a reason.
Yeah.
They're just looking for
no,
fight.
and that's what, like, if you, like, okay, and so what if you're making money or not making money? Is it costing you? But you called it out, and I loved it because I think the world is ready. What I'm seeing on the national circuit right now is I think that's why I'm getting hit a lot. Like yesterday, my big thing right now is AI, man. Oh, it is like they have to move people out because of the fire code of my presentation yesterday on AI. And so I'm doing a lot of AI, and I'm working with a company out of Israel that made the eye that shoots the missiles out of the sky. Now they've created devices for people that are blind, and so I'm their spokesperson. So I've been doing a lot on AI, but this, of course, I went in there and I told them, I said, some of you are in here because of controversy, some are in here because of conspiracy, and some of you are in because of inquiry. We're going to go on an emotional roller coaster today, but I know all of you are going to leave here with some tools that you're going to be able to use. And so this guy just goes off, well, I'm not even so it was for administrators. I'm not even an administrator, I'm a teacher. And I'm sick and tired of kids coming in my classrooms that when I run it through the scan checker that it says that 80% of their paper was written by AI. And he just wouldn't stop. So I finally looked at him. I said, look, let me explain something to you. I write a lot of my stuff on AI, and you would never know because I know how to scrub it. I said, it's not going to, and then another teacher stood up. She says, well, I teach 9th, 10th, and 11th, 12th graders, and I'm not going to let any of my students play with AI until the second semester of their, and I looked her straight in the face. I said, they're already using it. What the hell are you thinking? Siri is AI, Alexa is AI, Google is AI, your Your car has AI. GPS is AI. ChatGPT is just the text version of Google. Google is AI. And I said the only difference is that this software has the ability to categorize and classify so fast. You can do things in 25 seconds that would take you even an hour on Google to research. So it's just going to make things speed up. If you think that you're going to censor this like cell phones, then you know what? She's like, well, I'll be out of a job. I say, you're not going to be out of a job. The only people who are going to be out of a job are the people that don't learn how to use AI. I told her that. And then after the meeting, people came up. They were like, I'm so glad you said that to her. And I wasn't doing it to humiliate her, but like she just needed a reality check.
Some knowledge. Well, I have to say, Chris, you're a Latino, Orgullo Latino. I am very proud that you and I went to school together and that we graduated together. I am super proud of all your accomplishments and can't wait to see more.
And this has been a great podcast. Thank you again for coming on. And we're going to have to close it out on behalf of myself and Martha Dabdoub
with Realty MD.
and Hypnosis Works, and of course, Dr. Bonn. We can't wait to air this and see the response that we get. So we want to say goodbye from Empowering People. And stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks again. Ciao.